All right, so the Leisure Olympics, what's up? It's usually just me and my homies. We just play a bunch of sports. We keep track of points for everything. And at the end of the week, we've got winners. We've got losers. There's good things that happen and bad things that happen to everybody. And it's awesome. So the winners, what do they get? Well, they're rewarded with captainship for the next year. First, second, and third place are captains for the next year. The bottom players, if you survive the gulag, you're good. But if you lose the gulag, you are deemed the ultimate loser and you must fulfill the ultimate punishment. So in order to do the Leisure Olympics, we've got to set up a few things. Going into slight detail, registration, and this is just athlete, bathlete. If you want to play, you're an athlete. If you don't want to play, but you just want to come vibe, you're a bathlete. Voting sheets, this has been updated to a two-step process. The voting sheet draft, it's a good time. It helps introduce new sports. It's a great way to advocate. And then the actual voting sheet, this is determining what the sports are, and it also determines the punishments for the punishment wheel and the ultimate punishment. This is a pretty important part to the Olympics. Then once you've done your voting sheet, once you know what sports you're playing, you can go ahead and do the captain draft. And all this is your top three winners from the previous year. They draft the teams for all the captain draft teams or whatever during the election part of the Leisure Olympics.
Still not decided, but Clay traded to get first pick. Condition being, Ben would go as first pick.
Jump 8. That is our
The
fourth pick
is
of
jump
the round.
8. Fifth pick. The pick is
Blazing fucking Blaze! Wow! Wow!
You know what I think's freaking wild? That an admin went last.
And then finally, you have your house booking. Once we do all of those, we're pretty much good to go. One update is there will be one extra day, so it's now 7 total days. So you've got all your setup. Now it's time to actually play the games. So this is the format and the rules for everything. Basically, all sports voted in will be played in the order of 1 primary and 2 elections, repeated 6 times. Once all the sports have been played, the Gulagis will compete in the Gulag to determine the ultimate loser who must fulfill the ultimate punishment. Let's look at primaries. These are individual sports, and this will start the Leisure Olympics. A random drawing determines the order in which primaries are played. Because primaries are individual sports, you have first, second, third, all the way down to 10th, 11th, 12th place. A scoring breakdown of how many points you get. Yeah, it basically just looks like this. First, second, and third place will become the scramble draft captains. And 11th and 12th place in the primary will have to spin the punishment wheel, which takes effect for the next 2 elections. So moving on to the elections, these are just team sports. So the first election after primaries follows the rule for the scramble draft. Second election after primary follows rules for the captain draft. Now there's 12 elections total, and they will score as following. Now let's look at these draft guidelines. We've got the captain draft. These teams are only drafted once in the beginning by the Leisure Olympics captains and will remain the same for all 6 captain draft elections. And the scramble draft, these will be different teams, most likely, every time you play, different captains, most likely, and it'll add a good amount of variety for sure. Before I dive into the scramble draft or the captain draft, just take a look at both of these drafts and notice the arrows. The scramble draft arrows indicate that this is a standard draft. It is not a snake, whereas the captain draft is a snake draft. One other thing to note about these drafts is the captain draft, again, it's only done once in the beginning, and the scramble draft will be done 6 times, and this is done after every primary. So how exactly does the scramble draft work? Well, before you can draft, you need to know what your punishments are for those who got 11th and 12th place. So they can go ahead and spin the punishment wheel.
Picking some sports, and Jake and Gabe will be spinning some punishments. And it's looking like Jake has rolled no hydration once again.
And once you do that, your first place can go ahead and pick whatever position he wants, whether that's first pick in the first column, second pick in the second column, or third pick in the third column. After they pick, second pick can go ahead and pick whatever's left between the 2 options, and then third, they don't get to pick, they're just left with whatever's on the board. So looking at the scramble draft, second pick gets to choose the second athlete and eliminate a sport. What that means is when you pick your athlete, you get to eliminate a sport that cannot be chosen by the third pick. So you'll see that the third pick gets to choose his third athlete and gets to choose the sport that will be played for this draft. So after this draft is all said and done, whatever was picked by the 3rd pick, that is the sport that will be played. Once you're done with the scramble draft, you can go ahead and choose the sport that will be played for the captain draft team. You already know what these teams are because they've been drafted, but this is, again, randomly drawn out of a hat, just like the order of primaries. Also, don't forget, the punishment wheel lasts for both the scramble draft and the captain draft. So once we've played all the sport, it's time to figure out the winners and losers, and we do that by tallying all the election and primary points together for one's individual score. Plain and simple, 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, you win captainship for the next year. Alright, so the ultimate loser. How do we figure out the ultimate loser? Well, this is done by the Gulag. This is basically an event that is unanimously decided upon by the 3 Gulagis within 1 hour. Anything qualifies as an event, from games of chance to skill, whatever the imagination can come up with. Now let's look at the Gulagis. There's 3, and they're determined by first looking at the total score for each captain drafted team. What counts for your team total here, by the way, is all of your captain drafted team sports added together. Your scramble draft teams do not count and your primaries do not count. It's just whatever your team as a whole did for the captain draft. This is again why it's added emphasis to why it's so important to draft a good team or get drafted on a good team, because you can avoid being in the Gulag. The lowest scoring team sends its 2 lowest scoring individual athletes to the Gulag, and the 2nd lowest scoring team sends its lowest scoring athlete individual to the Gulag. The team who scored the highest is safe from the Gulag. And I'm telling you, no position is safe, dude. We've seen some crazy things that you think you're safe, but then the Gulag comes to bite you. Shout out to 2020 Davis. And that's what's crazy. You can be in 8th place and still end up being the ultimate loser, having to do the ultimate punishment. Crazy. And it goes both ways too, because you have Davis in 8th place who lost. And then you had Gideon last year, 2021, who didn't win a single sport. He was in dead last.
Oh, shoot! Is this the last life?
Gideon 1 life, Josh 2 lives, Gabe 3 lives. This is for the tattoo. Great spin, great spin. This could be the tattoo if he hits dead. Gideon gains a life. He's down to 2. Up to 2.
Did not end up as the ultimate loser. That is sick. It just really feels like anybody can win and anybody can lose. And we've seen 2 people both win and lose. Lose meaning end up with the ultimate punishment.
Go Pickles.